Well, gentlemen, congratulations for the Black Guelph.
Well,
Congratulations for the Black Guelph. So, more of a congratulations is being showcased at one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world, the Dances with Films. How do you folks feel about that?
yeah, I feel over the moon. Myself and Tiernan have been watching Dances with Films from a kind of close eye for years now, and we've always wanted to have a film to go there. Um, I think the ethos of the festival is very much in line with myself and Tiernan. It's really about meritocracy and it's about independent film and films that might not get a chance because it doesn't have a big star attached or a huge international studio behind it or whatever. So myself and Tiernan have been eyeing the festival for a long time, so it's an absolute honor that we could showcase our film in Hollywood Boulevard in the Chinese Theater in the most iconic cinema screen in the world.
Most excellent. Well, let's start with the obligatory question first. Is where the original idea came from for this movie?
I suppose that there was a short film that I wrote years ago called "Bless You, Father, for You Have Sinned," and it's about intergenerational trauma deriving from clerical abuse. Now, it was something that never got made, and myself and Tiernan teamed up together as business partners in Cluster Fox Films, and we essentially our ethos is giving voice to the voiceless. So communities who don't get a voice, because we both come from marginalized backgrounds ourselves, myself and Tiernan. So Tiernan actually wrote another script called Abraham's Bosom that covered similar themes, and it reminded me of my old script. So we sort of kind of got together on turning it into a feature-length film, wasn't it, Tiernan?
Yeah, that was it. It was kind of really what we were kind of exploring was the idea that, how trauma can be passed down to generations. And I suppose any sort of kind of community out there that has dealt with any sort of kind of traumatic experience, even if it's historical, it can be embedded in behavior that society doesn't seem as kind of appropriate. But people kind of tend to forget that most kind of negative behaviors like crime and the sort come from maybe a common kind of thread of trauma that runs deep, so deep that you lose touch with the original trauma and you're acting out behaviors. So, it's like a grandfather traumatizes the father traumatizes the son, or whatever, But this film kind of really looks at that. It looks at, is this an acting out of trauma, or is this kind of just criminal behavior from the lead, which is Kanto, played by Graham Early.
So tell us about the two characters that you wanted to portray in this film, because they're both linked somehow, but they have different traumas in their own way.
Well, I suppose the thing is, one is the cause, the other is the symptom. But the point is, who's the cause and who's the symptom?
Huh.
So I suppose the father, is he the cause, or is he the symptom of his experience? And what about the son? Is he the cause of the crime, or is he the symptom of the trauma and the abandonment of the father? And that's the question we're posing. Where does it start and where does it end? And how does it come into reality?
Okay. So in the case with these two characters, you wanted to basically show their struggles, their redemption, their reconciliation. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, well, if you take the lead character of Kanto, I suppose the way we set the film up is we see Kanto in a gangland world, and he's the leader of his gang. And what you kind of think is you're about to watch a gangster film. But soon you realize that Kanto has his own problems. We see that Kanto has mental health problems. He's suffering from panic attacks. He's on medication. He's dabbling with drugs. He has a girlfriend that he's becoming estranged from. He's a kid and another one on the way. And you're seeing all the symptoms of Kanto's trauma. And essentially, it's an exploration as to where that comes from. Eventually, his father comes back into the affray. and his father had abandoned him years earlier. And it becomes somewhat of a different film in that we kind of delve into the industrial school systems that were in place in Ireland. So these were essentially like, San Quentin for kids who were sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. And 220,000 kids went through those systems in Ireland. And it's of my opinion, and of course, Tiernan is an integrative psychotherapist as well as a cognitive scientist. But it's of my opinion that a lot of the trauma, a lot of the problems, a lot of the gangland culture, the drug addictions, and all the kind of negative stuff that has happened in Ireland over the past 50 years or so, a lot of that derives from the industrial school system setup.
Now, I mean, you make it sound like it's a sort of like a Ireland issue. Could you talk more about that and the research behind it?
Yeah, well, it isn't. I suppose it's interesting because we won Oldenburg, which is the Oldenburg Film Festival, which is a fabulous film festival, and essentially known as the Sundance of Germany. We won the best film, and Graham Early got best actor. And it was interesting because when we were going over there, the issues that we had kind of witnessed and we've heard about them was horrendous stuff that was coming out in Ireland. And there's a gagging order, and we referenced the gagging order in the film that Dan couldn't talk about it. He had to sign a disclaimer basically saying he couldn't talk. That's for real, like that happened. But it was interesting when we were going over to Germany, it was starting to come to light in Germany. We know that, indigenous populations in Canada and in America have experienced similar situations. So this is not purely an Irish thing. This is a story, a global story that many communities have experienced in a variety of ways, from institutional abuse or trauma relating from kind of systemic abuse. That is told in the context of the Irish story.
So, John, tell us about directing this film and trying to balance, the gang story and then the abuse story together.
Yeah, well, I suppose the gang story is really just a vehicle to show the repercussions of the trauma. So the reason why Kanto is involved in all of this is because he's an individual that is riddled with trauma, has not had many opportunities in life, and grew up in a tougher environment. So it's kind of get tougher, be killed. And it's the vehicle that we kind of explore the trauma through. I mean, directing this film was, I'd say, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, for sure. It was no joke. We did it in a very tricky time in Ireland. We have a very small population in Ireland, about less than 6 million. But I mean, we had 10,000 COVID cases per day. We had a whole host of troubles that came along with that in terms of filming it. We made it on a micro budget film. We didn't have access to so many different facilities, locations, costume department, props, all things that were near impossible to make. But what we did have was a goodwill and a good spirit, because everyone who got involved, from cast to crew, knew somebody who went through the industrial school system, and they know it as being probably one of the worst crimes in Irish history, what happened to these children. So we had a good spirit. We all got together, and it was an absolute team effort, and it really took that, because there were some really tough times. And also filming in really tough weather in January in 2021 in Ireland, the weather gets really tough and icy and snowy, and so it was an almost a traumatic ordeal within itself making the film. But the film kind of had to be that tough to make. I don't think we would have done the same job, or I don't think that energy would have bled into the film if it were not, a very difficult thing to do.
Sounds like a true indie film, with all the blood, sweat, and tears, for sure.
Yeah, and no money.
Now, you had to be very creative. You mentioned this. Was this filmed during the pandemic or after the pandemic for yourselves?
We filmed it right in the middle. We were coming out of kind of the variants, the first variants, the alpha variant. And in Ireland at the time, it was very, very difficult, because we had one of the highest rates of the alpha variant, which was a very dangerous variant in the world. And trying to keep everybody safe, we had to use a variety of different measures to keep everybody safe on set. We were doing kind of, You know, we lived in bubbles. There was daily COVID tests. I think it was it about a third of the budget, John, went on
Yeah,
just
I was
COVID.
just about to say that, Tiernan. Yeah, a third of the budget went to COVID restrictions and stuff that we needed around that. Yeah.
So how did this affect the locations that you actually chose? Because I thought the locations that you chose was very highly representative of certain Irish neighborhoods of the class that you want to portray in the film.
Yeah, no, we had full access to those kind of neighborhoods. Now, one thing I would say is we did reshoot 6 months later, which probably ends up being a half of the movie, where so the COVID restrictions were lessened massively, if not gone, Tiernan, by then.
Yeah,
But those neighborhoods, like Sheriff Street, for instance, where we do that big set piece, the big chase, that was all kind of by accident. We had a kind of minor idea for a bit of a chase, but nothing big. Do you remember that, Tiernan? And when we got down there, we sort of just felt the energy of the place, and we just put one shot onto the other, onto the other, onto the other, and then it just turned out into being kind of one of the most, kinetic and energetic chases in Irish film history. And like I remember at one point, we got down to near where we were going to end it, and Tiernan came to me with an idea, and he said, "Look, why don't we put Kanto, the lead character, on that motorbike? Because there was a guy there who had a motorbike." And we just went with it, and that extended the chase right into nighttime and beyond. So a lot of it was just improvising in the moment, going with the energy, free flowing, and not always reverting back to script. Just listening to the kind of whisper in the wind, which is really, really exciting, and that stuff had us adrenaline pumped and ensured that we all had a really good time as well as panicked a lot of the time.
So what originally was that chase scene in the script? What was the original plan for that?
I was just literally just chasing just down the street in one kind of shot, really. And what I did was I had a chat with an old lady, and who was living there in the street, and I said, "Look, can I run through your house with a camera and over the back wall?" And she was like, "Yeah, no problem." So we did that, and over another back wall, and then we just seen kids with loads of motorbikes, and we asked them to follow the lead character, and we had lads who were actual drug dealers there dealing, and we just filmed them, and they all got involved. So it became a community project.
That is a terrific scene. So with the pandemic, with the community, tell us how you settled on your casting for the film.
Casting for the film. Well, actually, we had an original lead. He was a great actor, but he backed out. And Tiernan, remember Tiernan, you suggested to me about Paul Rowe, Tiernan? Remember that?
I'd seen him in a short which was called The Mechanic, and he was just a powerhouse on that. He really was. He basically was Dan in that particular short. You could see the vulnerability. It's about this guy who got in a car and was going up to the mountains, rural area, and he was planning to take his own life by putting the hose in the back window of his car. And this old man happened to be out hiking and got into trouble and got into the car to get out of the rain. And they built a little relationship there, and it kind of changed his mind. But the vulnerability that he portrayed in that short just basically sang Dan, didn't it?
Yeah, it was Dan. And when Tiernan said that, I said, "You're absolutely right." So we got him involved. And the freaky kind of serendipitous kind of thing around that was that Paul Rowe's father and uncle and grandfather all went to Letterfrack Industrial School. So he basically did that film for his family members who went through that. And then Graham Early played Kanto. Graham is a good friend of mine. We've made about 10 films together now, and he's one of the best actors of his generation in Ireland. So that was a no-brainer. He was attached very early on, wasn't he, Tiernan?
Yeah, he was a no-brainer.
I think we attached. Yeah, and then Tony Doyle, he did an audition for Virgil, and it was weird because it wasn't exactly Virgil as me and Tiernan imagined, but I went and met him, and in the room I gave him a bit of direction, and he did it perfectly, and I just gave him the role on the spot. And then Denise, who played Beatrice, is just one of the best actors in Ireland, so I kind of had to convince her a bit, and to do it. But yeah, she saw a way around it. So I mean, we managed to get like as good as an ensemble cast as you're going to get in an independent film. Really, like these are all pros, you know, who really know how to do their job. No acting inside out. So we were pretty fucking lucky.
Most excellent. And I'm curious, was the houseboat setting, was that originally in the script, or you just basically just somehow put it into the film?
That's the story. It was an interesting story. We originally had a house, and because remember the context was COVID, so we originally had this house, and it was an amazing. Do you remember this, John? We had this amazing house just around the corner, and what happened was basically we turned up, and you know when a film crew turns up on set, so the DOP turned up, and it started to look like a serious production. And I think the person who owned the house went, "Hang on a second, there's going to be an army of people moving around my house." So this was a couple of days. So they pulled it. This was a couple of days before we had to shoot. So we really wanted to cover an aspect of homelessness in the film as well, because a lot of the people who have been through the industrial school have ended up homeless. And homelessness in Ireland is at an emergency scenario. It's horrendous. The levels of homelessness in Ireland is beyond belief. The government kind of plays it down a lot, and they play down the whole situation about the industrial schools as well. So we really wanted to shine a lens on homelessness. Now, I had covered a documentary prior to this, which was I followed a young woman who was homeless, and she ended up buying a barge to basically get off the streets. But there's so much legislation in Ireland about, you know, owning a home and suitable habitat that they keep moving the barges. You have to move the barge, or they throw you off it and fine you and end up homeless again. So myself and John spoke about that, and we thought that was a very important thing under the Irish context to cover, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, Tiernan, absolutely. But also, Tiernan, it was, you know, serendipity has followed us on this shoot, and follow me and you all the time. Yeah. And it turned out to be one of the best things because the barge was so fucking cinematic and it had a magic about it. And then the irony is then we had to leave the barge and we had to find another location, which became the homeless shelter, which we just made it. This wasn't in the script. We made it a part of the script. They had to move because we had to get out of the barge because we ruined the barge, or somebody left stuff by, whatever happened anyway. But we wouldn't stop, and we kept rewriting the script. So we went from a house to a barge to a homeless shelter. Think about it now. It's the maddest experience that I've ever had in my life. But I wouldn't change it. Now, it was horrific at times, but it's like, retrospectively, it's so funny, you know. But me and Tiernan are problem solvers, you know, and where there's a problem, we're going to solve it. You know what I mean? No matter what.
we were certainly thinking on our feet. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Wow, I never realized your adventures into filmmaking. You have to change so much of the script or of the production just in the middle of a midst of things.
Yeah, it's what Tiernan calls putting out fires. You know, you just got to put the fire and keep going and hope you don't get burned.
I was kind of a producer, part-time fireman.
Part-time fireman. Yeah, 100%. I was a director who was taking a mental health breakdown,
but then acted as a paramedic for the rest of the crew.
Oh yeah, not a bother on me. Yeah.
Well, most excellent. Well, let me start wrapping things up with you folks here. So, what is your love for independent film? Why do you love this?
The excitement, not knowing what's going to happen, the sense of community, because when you go on, I've done big productions as an actor, and I just did a really big show for Netflix, and you know, there's a bit of luxury there, and that's nice, but you don't have that kinetic energy on set and that sense of community, because with an independent film, people come together like a family, and it's what's required. And usually with an independent film, you know, you're doing something that's really interesting and it's outside the box because it couldn't get funded inside the system. Like this film, we were told not even to submit this to Screen Ireland, which is the main funding institution of Ireland, They told us not even to submit officially after reading it because they're never going to make it, and told me it was the wrong film for me to make it for my directorial debut. But we decided that was the wrong decision on their behalf, and we found private investment and met it for next to nothing really. But I mean, that sort of buzz on set. And look, most of my favorite films are independent films. So yeah, like, look, I'd like to do it with a little bit more money, but definitely that independent space is where I want to be.
Tiernan?
Yeah, I suppose the word independent is the key to it. You know, it's about kind of, you're on your own. It's a bit like, you know, the way the Buddhists say, you know, you can be in a life raft and you can pray to God and hope he arrives, or you can just row your own boat. I think independent film is rowing your own boat, you know, and essentially what you're doing is you're coming across all the different, you know, obstacles, and it creates this kinetic energy, as John said, that it's impossible to put that on, you know, in a certain film. You have to have that energy, and I think that comes true in independent film, and you can see the lack of it in studio films a lot of the time. It loses that authenticity. There is something missing. I suppose they're covering it up with green screen and action heroes, but it's literally when you're being real and you're in a real situation and you've got a camera, there's expenses, and everybody's dependent on everybody. It's incredible what you can do. And I think that's a good, you know, independent film is a good kind of metaphor for society and the society we live in. When everybody works together, when everybody realizes that there's issues and there's great things and bad things, but we all work together to overcome them, then we create something that's really special.
And you both certainly showed that in this film, working together and accomplishing something terrific. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us, and hopefully we bump into each other in Los Angeles at the Dances with Film Festivals.
It'd be great. Looking forward to meeting you.
Most excellent.
Thank you very
very
much.
much. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.